Hey everyone, welcome back to the Grow IT podcast. And today I can tell you I'm extremely excited to have our next guest. Daniel Priestley is the founder of Dent Global and ScoreApp. He's an award-winning entrepreneur, best-selling 6 books, which we'll talk probably about a couple of these during our conversation. And founder of multiple 7 and 8 figure ventures, and just someone that we've modeled our business after. And I'm really excited to speak with him this morning. So Daniel, welcome.
Terrence, so good to be on the show.
Yeah, thank you. So I know you get this a lot, but let's talk real quick about your background and your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, so I'm 42 now, but I've been an entrepreneur since 21, so half my life. And I started my first company, which actually I'll take you even back a little further than that. I had a mentor from 19 to 21 where I was part of his startup. And I was employee number 3, and then we got up to 60 people in 2 years, and he taught me a ton of stuff. One of the best lessons he ever taught me was the lesson, everything's downstream from lead generation, and he taught me a lot about how to do lead generation, how to run campaigns and all that sort of stuff. And then when I went and launched my own business, it grew really quickly. So I went from 0 to $1 million in the first year, 1 to 10 million in the following couple of years. So by the time I was 24, we were doing about $1 million a month in sales. Since then, I've built, I think, 7 different startups. I've had several businesses go north of 10 million in value. I've had a couple of businesses that I've bought and turned around. They were failing, and I fixed them and sold them. I've been acquisitive. I've bought, I think, 5 different companies over the years. So very much up to my elbows in entrepreneurship. I've written about the journey in the books. I've got 3 little kids. I live in London. So there's the top line.
How old are your children?
My kids are 5, 6, and 9.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm 42.
They keep you busy.
They sure do.
So I want to ask this. So in one of your books, obviously, and for those listening, I'm a big fan of Daniel. I've read his book, Oversubscribing and Key Person of Influence. And one of the the first things that struck me when I read, I believe it was Oversubscribed, and it first talks about the 5 core strengths of becoming a key person of influence, is pitching. And I remember putting down the book and immediately stopping, saying, I better go write my pitch, right? Because that's probably the first part. And I'm curious. So what would be, when someone says to you, what do you do, Daniel, or what does Dent Global do? What is your pitch?
So before I give you that, let's just give it some context.
Okay.
We're all going to introduce ourselves to 1,000 people a year in one form or another, whether it's on social media or it's on a stage or it's one-to-one networking. So we're constantly kind of in the rhythm of introducing ourselves. And the way it works is that you either introduce yourself and you come across as a newbie, that you're brand new to something. A lot of times people say, oh, I'm doing something new, or they say, I used to be in finance, but now I'm in coaching, and they make it sound like it's brand new. Or you introduce yourself, like most people do, as a worker, which means that you're looking to sell your labor. You want your labor to be seen as valuable, and you want someone to buy that labor. Or the third way is to position yourself as a key person of influence, where people believe that you are someone who cares passionately about an outcome and is building alignment and building a team around that outcome. And people get a sense, oh, wow, this person's actually kind of not trying to sell labor. They're actually a key person of influence. So in many cases, context is everything as well. So for example, the fact that you've just introduced me on the podcast says I don't even have to introduce myself, right? You've done
True.
A lot of the heavy lifting for me.
True.
So in that situation, sometimes if I'm meeting someone and the context means that they don't know who I am or anything like that, I might say, I'm Daniel Priestley. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Dent Global, which is an entrepreneur accelerator that's been going for the last 12 years. We've had 4,500 companies come through. I also head up a group of services companies that offer B2B services. And recently we spun out a tech company that won Scale Up Entrepreneur of the Year after 3 years of rapid, fast growth globally. I've written 6 books on entrepreneurship, and I care passionately about entrepreneurs who stand out, scale up, and make a positive impact in the world. So something along those lines is like, oh, okay, sounds like this person's not a newbie. Maybe they're not also a worker. So it's that positioning of, do I want to keep having a conversation with this person as someone who can get stuff done? And that's what I'm trying to get across if I'm introducing myself.
Yeah, and I guess the question is for all entrepreneurs, right? I mean, that really stuck out to me. I've been an entrepreneur for probably 20 plus years, and I've thought about that, right? How many times in social settings or in any setting when people ask what you do, and it's easy to just defer to, hey, I sell real estate, or I do, whatever it may be, right? And in a, I don't want to say in a discounted or commoditized way, but not to really to deliver the value proposition and what it is that's unique about what you do. And that's what struck me. And I wonder if that's, one of the most important parts in terms of why you would start with crafting pitch, or would you recommend that?
It's if you do a good pitch, it's because you see yourself in a certain way, and it reflects who you see yourself as well. See, the funny thing about pitching is that you could do a really, really, really good pitch for the value of your labor. You could do an amazing pitch as to why you're a great financial planner, but it still doesn't come across that you're a key person of influence. And that's what I'm really trying to get people to shift gear. I'm trying to. It's not about pitching your labor anymore. It's about pitching something bigger than that. It's about pitching yourself as a person of influence, probably someone who's already got a team or is building a team, someone who might develop technology one day, someone who may create some media content that's worth watching. So it's about encapsulating all of that so that you're not just simply saying, hey, I'm really good at what I do and please buy from me.
Yep. Well, let's talk a little bit about lead generation, right? I mean, every business that exists that's the lifeblood, right, of their source of revenue, and it's probably one of the most difficult things that businesses struggle with, regardless of size. And there is so much noise in the marketplace to cut through, and I know that you've talked about a really unique demand side strategy when it comes to go to market offers and providing value to prospects as part of that lead generation. And that really struck home with us, in our firm. And I want you to kind of talk a little bit about that, about what that entails and what that means, that demand side strategy when it comes to lead generation.
My first mentor, this guy called John, he said everything's downstream from lead generation. And he explained to me that you could have the world's best product or service. If you can't generate leads for it, it really doesn't matter how good it is because no one's paying any attention, no one's signaling that they're interested. So you're not going anywhere with it. On the flip side, you could be, let's use an extreme example, you could be Kim Kardashian, who's got millions and millions and millions of followers, and you can plug almost any product or service into that and you'll make, hundreds of millions of dollars because you've got the lead generation side. You can sort out anything downstream from that lead generation. So I'll give you some examples.
Okay.
When I recently launched, I launched a new business called bookmagic.ai. And we hadn't written any lines of code. We hadn't designed a platform. We hadn't really explored the technology too deeply. But we had an idea that AI could help people to write books. And we thought, okay, let's see if people are interested in that. So we created a waiting list campaign and said, we're working on some technology to use AI to help authors to write a book. Or if you've got a book inside you and you want to get it out, we're building some AI tools that helps with that. If you're interested in that, join the waiting list. Bearing in mind, nothing built at that point. So the only thing built was the waiting list. So what happened is that immediately 750 people filled in the waiting list. So I just posted on LinkedIn. It got a little bit of traction. People said, yeah, I definitely want to do that. So they filled in the form from LinkedIn. And as they filled in the form, we asked them 6 questions. One of the questions was about pricing. How much would you be willing to pay for software that could help you write a book? And one of the questions was about what type of book do you want to write? And what we discovered is that actually people want to write business or personal development books, and they're happy to pay about twice as much as we thought. We thought that they were willing to pay $20 a month. They actually said they're willing to pay $40 a month. So as a result of that, we took that to some angel investors because whenever I do a new venture, I want to test it with some angel investors to kind of test the value of the actual equity proposition. And immediately we raised £250,000, so about $300,000 or $400,000. And it was because we had the waiting list. They saw that we had 750 people on waiting lists. They saw we had the data for the pricing proposition, and they saw that we had a CTO who could easily build the tech. So it all started with the lead generation. Can we generate leads for this product? If we can, then we can build it. Now, what most tech companies would do is they'd spend 3 months in stealth mode building something, and then they'd try and launch it and figure out whether it was viable or not. So, we want to flip that on its head.
It's interesting, right? You're essentially using lead generation to see if there's even a business model that exists, right? I mean, it's almost like putting your making sure that you're not putting the time and resources into something to see if there's a market for it. You're going out to the market to seeing if there is a demand for something like that from a low cost, low time, low resources standpoint.
That's exactly what I want to do. I do not want to be wasting my time on a business idea if there's no demand for it. Okay. A really good example to think about is that airlines are the most unbelievably unfair business in the world. You've got to get absolutely everything right, or the customer hates you, or they get in physical danger. And for doing all of the things that airlines have to do, they get a 3 to 7% profit margin. On the flip side, Rolex watches are completely unnecessary. We don't need the thing that they do. They can be copied for about 5% of the cost of a real Rolex. They don't offer great customer service, but they're really, really, really good at generating demand. So what I've learned in 20 years in business is that actually, if the demand isn't there, you will not have margins, you will not have growth, you will not have anything. You could make the world's best widget. If the demand's not there, you're fighting an uphill battle, and it's very, very little rewards. So I always want to front run demand over supply.
Which makes a ton of sense. And they're very expensive, by the way, to service, by the way.
They are.
I found that out the hard way. Let me ask you this. I'm going to do this from a selfish standpoint. Our, clients are like niche IT consulting firms. They are selling high ticket type of deals. They're very high relationship. They're providing service solutions.
Mm-hmm. I know it well, by the way.
You do? Good.
Built and sold an IT business, yeah.
Great. Okay, so you obviously know, right? They're used to, and I think this will translate to other business as well. That's why I'm asking that. They're used to referrals, networks, inbound type of lead generation and marketing, right? And longer sales cycles, but they really struggle with this aspect of setting up marketing and lead generation. And like I said, I don't think this is unique to just niche IT consulting firms. What is the best way? What would you suggest in terms of where they should start in terms of their focus, putting time, resources for the best long-term payoff?
There tends to be 4 tactical ways to generate leads week in, week out that work really well for these businesses. And I'm not talking in theory. I've literally built and sold an IT services business, which I bought for a small amount and sold it for a lot. So here's some ways to generate leads. Number 1, having a registration of interest page where people can register their interest in completing a project. So rather than people having to purely and simply say, yes, I want to go ahead with anything, it's like, no, I just want to start the process. Make it easy for people to start to explore. If someone wants to explore an idea, let's have a brainstorming session. Let's have a whiteboarding session. Give it a name like a whiteboarding session. Book a whiteboarding session. You can have an advanced whiteboarding session where you say for $500, you'll get one of our senior technology people and one of our senior designers, and we're going to block out 90 minutes and actually 2 of us will work with you on a whiteboard to flesh out the idea that you've got, the technology idea. So that would be one way. Another great way is a discussion group. So a discussion group is it could be a WhatsApp group, a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group, but essentially you host a group and you say, we're hosting a group for people who run e-commerce businesses and, more than $1 million of revenue or something like that. So you could host a discussion group. Third way is a regular introduction Zoom event. So an introduction event every week or every 2 weeks, you have an introduction to building a customer portal, or an introduction to automating your sales and marketing, or an introduction to e-commerce growth. So you could basically go through and create an introduction to blank. And what you do is if it's every 2 weeks, you spend week 1 getting 5 or 6 people to show up through some cold outreach on LinkedIn. And actually, I'll pause there. Here's how you do that. You talk about one case study that you got a great result. So last year, we worked with an e-commerce platform to go from 2 to 6 million of revenue. We did that because we optimized this, and this. We learned some really valuable lessons. I'm going to explain it on a introduction workshop. If you'd like to join, just let me know and I'll send you the link. So you talk about a case study and then say we're going to explore it in more detail, and then boom. So cold outreach, get 6 or 7 people on that every 2 weeks, and just take them through a good case study. Just talk them through. First, this was the problem. Here's what we saw. Here's what we did. Here's the insights that we got. Here's what we implemented. Here's the results. Here's our methodology. This is what we learned in the project. If you want to go ahead, let's do a whiteboarding session. So that would be an introduction. And then the final one is an online assessment. An online assessment is essentially, which is what ScoreApp is very good at, but it's basically the ability for people to self-assess. So they might say, is your IT strategy up to date? Answer 12 questions to find out. Are you falling behind because you're not using AI effectively? Answer 12 questions to find out. So anything that is an online quiz, people love taking online quizzes. They love self-assessment. So make it easy for them to do a self-assessment.
We just started, and that's something I was going to talk about. We just started using ScoreApp, and I'm kind of going to jump ahead to ask you about that because it's a from a lead generation standpoint, right? It's a kind of a unique approach. I like to look at it as a very disarming way to have a conversation with your target market, right? And by that, it always seems like people are more willing to share information about their buying process or what their pain points or desired outcomes are if they feel like there isn't a chance to be sold something, right?
Yeah.
And so, and ScoreApp, I want you to talk about that. That's kind of your newest offering in your ecosystem. And we, like I said, we've just started using it for our own prospecting as well as for some of our own clients. But I want to get your insight in terms of some best practices and how to use it, both from is there a market for a specific offer? How can entrepreneurs use it for lead generation? Kind of give us some of your ideas and best practices on how to use ScoreApp.
The background of ScoreApp is that in 2015, I launched a book, and we created a quiz that went with the book, and that it was an online self-assessment, and it generated 90,000 warm leads and tens of millions of sales. And essentially, people would read our content, go and take the quiz, and then the quiz results went to our sales team. The sales team got in touch and made a sale, and it was a game changer. It was one of those really powerful things. So many people asked me, how do I get one of those? So we started building them for people one at a time. And then we said, let's build a platform for this everything we've learned in this whole process, let's put it into a platform so anyone can do this. And we were able to make the price drop from about $9,000 per scorecard down to about $29 a month as a SaaS product. So really cool. Getting all of that best practice into one place cheaply. So we've had about 5,000 companies now sign up to use that platform, which is great. So ScoreApp is essentially a landing page that explains what the assessment's going to be about, then a series of quiz questions that is the assessment, and then the results page that's dynamic that tells you how you scored based on that. So simple example is kind of what type of person are you? Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you a dog person or a cat person? Are you a marathon runner or a sprinter? Right. So you answer questions and then it gives you an outcome, or it can give you a scale, like a score based on like 1 to 10. Like how ready are you to run a marathon? You're a 9 out of 10. You're a 2 out of 10. So it can do all of those kind of outcomes. People answer quiz questions and then it gives them the outcome, and then it gives them tailored results. As you said, it's very disarming because if a human was asking you 12 questions rapid fire, you'd probably say, hey, that's a bit cheeky. But when a computer system is asking you, you go, oh, yes, no, I like that, don't like that, I like this one, I don't like that one. And you answer the questions very quickly. It's like, oh, what color underwear are you wearing? Oh, I'm wearing pink today. Okay, great. Boom, 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 boom. So funny thing is we're just happy to do it when it's a computer system. But behind the scenes, that allows you to segment the list. It allows you to have a lot of data. We can enrich that data even further using data enrichment services. There's all sorts of stuff that we can do with that data to then turn that into a much more high converting marketing opportunity, a sales opportunity. So that's what ScoreApp kind of is. And your question was about best practices. Sorry, was that?
Yeah, and how to use it, because one of the things when we first started using it, one of my co-founders said, "Well, it's just like a quiz, right? We could just create a form, right?" And I said, "I don't think you've spent enough time in it, right? It is extremely powerful, right? In terms of it's not just the quiz and it's not just giving a score, the different things that are incorporated in it in terms of like that you can literally use as a plug and play." And going back to your story early on when you kind of used an early version of it to go to see if there was a market for, a product or a service you were looking at. It is such an easy way to just plug and play that into to find, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's anything where you want to essentially come up with a reason to capture data. So it's pretty easy because there's I think 60 different templates for different use cases that are already built, and you just plug your info in there. Put your logos and your branding on there. There's an AI tool that actually just builds it all for you. People always say, "Oh, but how do I come up with a concept?" And I'm like, "Have you played with the AI? Because AI will come up with 12 different concepts, and you just pick the one you like the best, and then it'll write 1,300 words for you."
That was one of the first. That was one of the first parts I used it. Right. So I jumped on. I signed up for it, and I kind of plugged in our pitch and our target market, and used that AI tool. And I was astounded at the type of questions that immediately came back. And like I'd say, to everybody in terms of AI, which we'll obviously talk about, later, but AI kind of gets you 80% of the way there. And in this case, it was really absolutely true. I mean, it came up with, I want to say 20 different questions. And I was able just to filter through and say, yep, I'm going to take that one. We're going to leave that one out. We'll edit this one. But it literally got me 80% of the way through.
It's wild, isn't it?
It's crazy.
I demo this regularly, and even still, when I'm demoing it, it often raises my eyebrows, and I go, "Wow, how did it do that?" It really is incredible. So it's simple to do. The most important thing with AI is you need to have the context of what you're trying to achieve, and then it does all the content. So the context that you need is like, what do you want to generate leads for? If you know that you're an e-commerce IT specialist, then you want to have an e-commerce optimization checklist, or you want to have like an online e-commerce strategy generator. And it's like answer 14 questions and we'll give you an e-commerce strategy for growth. And you can do all of that on a ScoreApp. So if you know the context of what you're trying to specialize in, what you're trying to win business for, let's say you specialize in working with government agencies, then you can build something that's very particular for them. So once the place that I like to start with people is I like to start with their most impressive case study. So I like to, if I'm talking to someone one-to-one, I always say, tell me about in the last 2 or 3 years, what's a really impressive client case study that you've worked with where the person is now a raving fan and you impressed yourself? Like you and your team gave yourself a secret little pat on the back and went, wow, that's cool. Because it's like, let's start by replicating that, right? What assessment would have helped at the beginning? What online quiz would help us to discover more people like that client? What would that client have wished that they could fill in so that they could get started on that project faster? And if we can start with that as the context, then these quizzes help us to find more clients just like that.
That is so important. That's one of the first things that we talk about with our clients, right? Which is like, hey, tell us about your success stories. Tell us about the best clients you have, the clients that you love working with, that they love working with you, right? And then taking those case studies and then going out to the market to find more clients that look like them. Let's stay on that for a second. How do you construct, or how would you recommend constructing those case studies? Because sometimes we'll talk to clients and they'll say, yes, we have it, and then it's this. I don't know, for lack of better words, dry, bullet pointed, case study, right? But what is the best way to kind of formulate it? Or is it a multiple of different ways?
There's a magic sentence. There's a magic sentence, and this sentence has a lot to it. So here's the magic sentence. We did something special with a certain type of person, and we got a rare and valuable result. So basically, we did something special. Is you would essentially define what was the starting point, what was the finishing point, and what was the methodology that you used. With a certain type of client, what type of client would this work for? And what was the rare and valuable result that you ended up with downstream, right? So essentially a great case study can be summed up as we did something special with a certain type of person and got a rare and valuable result. And
I
so if
love
you
that.
start with that sentence and then you put in all the detail, then that's a great case study. That's what people want to hear. So you might say, if you pad it out, you might say something like, from in 2016, we worked with a hospital to take their database online, and what we did is we assessed all their data, we enriched the data, we segmented the data, we put it in a new system, we did all of that sort of stuff. And then the rare and special result was we actually made the hospital run 40% more efficiently, which translates into people saving lives. It translates into kids spending less time in hospital away from their families. So it's basically you kind of unpack all of the flow-on effects. But that's the magic sentence is that, right? And
Yeah.
and essentially the rest is just detail.
I love that. I'm gonna write that down and start using it. And one of the things that we talked about earlier in terms of people and businesses trying to cut through the noise, that is a perfect example of how to do so, right? I mean, the more specificity that you can get with an industry, with a pain point, with a desired outcome, and a success story that you have, that's
Yeah.
the best way, right, to cut through the noise that's out in the marketplace, right? Because the people, their prospects on the other end are hearing that. They're hearing that you've solved their problem.
Oh, it's incredible too. If you ever do cold outreach, saying what you can do has almost no effect. Saying what you have done has a very high conversion. So if you reach out to someone and say, we're experts in growing e-commerce platforms, we can transform your e-commerce platform and grow you 10x. No one responds to that. But if you say 3 years ago, we took on a small e-commerce platform that was at this size and we did this, this, and this, and it grew 10x. We've learned a lot of lessons from that. We'd love to share with you some of those lessons. It's amazing. It's the same sort of message, but the difference is either future paced or past paced. Strangely, if you're focusing on what you've done rather than what you think you can do, it just carries so much weight. People respond massively to what you've done and very little to what you say you can do.
I think part of that too is that people don't know that they know your prospects know their business better than you do, right? Eventually, you should become an expert at their business, but they're able to fill in the gap. So if they say, hey, they've had a success with a prospect or client, or with a client that looked just like us, right? They're going to be able to fill in the gaps to say, I'll bet they can help us, right? So it becomes less of a sale, and
And
more of
a little bit of, strangely, a little bit of jealousy kicks in. It's
oh,
like, it's like, ooh, they got that result. I want that result, right? Oh, they did that. I know that company. I want a result like that. I want to make sure, I want to make sure that I get something like that as well. Um, yeah. So the fun thing is, a recommendation that I have for all business owners that I cross paths with is that we do like an audit of their history. And one of the things I love to do is like pull out your Apple photo app and organize it by months or years. And let's just skim through and just sort of say, what were some of the highlights of 2023, 22, 21, 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017? And we pull out a notepad and we basically say, tell me about like, use the photos to jog your memory, but tell me about like what was some of the cool projects that you were working on that year? What was the home run? What was the biggest achievement that you did in 2017, 18, 19? What was the biggest lesson? What was the biggest setback that you had? Sometimes a setback is a great story. We tried this and massively failed, and then we had to fix it. And here's what we learned from that whole process. That can actually work as well. But if you do a little history audit where you have a blank sheet of page and you're trying to capture case studies, success stories, lessons, and you're just organizing them on a timeline, you'll discover that you've got valuable intellectual property, and that valuable intellectual property you've just thrown it away. And I use this as an example with people. I say, imagine you had already bought a house and paid it off, but you'd not been to the lawyer's office, you'd not signed the paperwork, so it's not in your name, right? How quickly would you quickly run down and sign that so that it's in your name? I say, every time you've had a big success story, if you've not captured all the detail about that and put it down in writing and maybe made a video about it and start using it as a case study, it's like having a house that you've paid for, but you're just going to leave it sitting empty, and you're not going to sign off on it. You're not going to put it in your name. It's crazy.
They're extremely valuable, and like I said, that's what we utilize with our clients. It's literally the first thing we go through in our process with them, for the very reason that it helps makes our job a little easier in terms of generating additional leads for them. And you're talking about, you gave us your secret line there, and I'm going to tell you a quick story about when I finished reading your book, Oversubscribed. And I got to the end of it, and there's a part that I believe it says one last thing. It's the chapter I wrestled with. So from a marketing standpoint, so genius too, because you made it very vague. And the first thing I did is, well, I need to know which chapter it was, right? So I did a Google search, and the only thing I could find was one, and I'll probably include it in this video, was a tweet that you responded to someone asking. It was back, I believe, in like 2016. And the reason I bring that up is it was so important to me to find out, because at that point I had fully subscribed to everything you had put in the book. And I was like, I need to know what this is. And it was marketing for signals and not for sales. And what was so important and why that rang true is that, at least with our prospects and clients, that is extremely important. They're trying to get into more conversations. And my way of explaining that to them is this marketing for signals concept. And I want you to talk about it, because I found it to be so critical and so important in our business, and how we, convey that to our, clients who are on a much longer sales cycle. It very much fits them. And so I'd like you to I wanted to share that story, and I want to see if I can get some more secret sauce from you.
So the last chapter of the book says, there's a chapter I wrestled with. I almost didn't put it into the book because I felt like it was too good and it was too valuable to just give away for free. I'm not going to tell you which chapter it is, but there's a chapter in the book that I almost didn't put in here. So first of all, that is true. I actually did think about, there was a particular chapter there that went, wow, this is like stuff I should charge for. But I'm just going to put it in the book anyway. And then the second thing is, it's a gimmick, right? It's a gimmick because what I want you to do is reflect on the book. I want your brain to go cast your mind across all the chapters and say, well, which idea was most valuable to me? And what's really nice is that everyone who ponders on that last sentiment often comes up with a different answer. Some people go, the answer is I have to measure my sales results. Or the answer is I have to tell people what they want and then package in what they need. And like they pick something else out of the book and they go, that's what it is for me. And they go, that's it. And what's cool is, if that's what they came up with, then that's probably the thing they need to focus on, right? So if that surfaced up for them, it's a great gimmick in the sense that it actually brings up something valuable. And then the truth is that particular chapter was actually market for signals, not sales. So marketing for signals, not sales, is essentially this idea that your marketing campaigns should generate transparent signals of interest that everyone can see, and that what you're trying to do is create demand and supply tension through transparency. And essentially, you're trying to spit out all these signals so that your market understands that you're really quite popular, right? So, for example, if you do a campaign to join a WhatsApp group where essentially you're saying, hey, we're going to run a 10-day WhatsApp group to help you with your IT systems in 2024. And let's say you orchestrate a campaign to get 300 or 400 people into that group. Now 300 or 400 people become aware that there's 300 or 400 people who are interested in what you do. And it's like, ooh, that signal of interest starts the water boiling, starts putting the excitement, the heat in there. So what most people do is they're marketing to try and generate sales. So their whole focus is just, here's what we offer, here's how much it is, click the link to buy it, right? That would be extreme end of marketing for sales. totally doesn't work. It relies upon someone being 100% sure that they want to buy. Right down the other end is super, super soft signals. Join this group, join a waiting list, register your interest. Like our Facebook page if you're interested in that. Follow us on Facebook or follow us on LinkedIn and we'll get you some more information. Drop this comment into the chat and we'll send you the information. So this is like super soft signals. So what we did with our marketing is we just moved right down to soft signals of interest, where people are just softly signaling that they're interested in something. And then we also moved towards anything that created the added layer of transparency where our customers who are interested in working with us can see that others are interested in working with us as well. And that's what creates the excitement and the tension that makes sales effortless and fun.
Yeah. I want to ask you one. There's so much I'd love to talk to you about, but I do want to. It kind of goes in along with that marketing for signals that obviously was important to me. That was the big key that I took away from the book. So message received. One of the other things you talk about that's important to us and our clients is that 7-hour rule. And if you can, right, talk a little bit about the importance of it. It's again, especially with cold outreach. If you're trying to do anything other than networking referrals or word of mouth for your deal flow, going out to the market, right? And prospects having to build trust with prospects that don't know you from anyone. And they're going to make big decisions, right? Because these are big, sales ticket deals. Talk a little bit about that 7-hour rule and what's the best way, case studies we talked about, right? We utilize those, but talk about some of the ways talk about the importance of the 7-hour rule and some of the different ways that you can kind of utilize it.
Years ago, I was walking down this incredibly busy street in London, Oxford Street, and it's packed, like absolutely packed. And I'm walking and I'm half looking at my phone. I'm listening to something in my headphones, and I'm not paying any attention to cars or people, but somehow I'm just magically navigating my way down this busy street. And then across the road, in a busy crowd of faces, there's a friend of mine who I haven't seen in years. But my brain picks that face out of the crowd and I go, oh, there's my friend. So I cross the street and I go and say hello. And I think to myself as I'm crossing the street, how did my brain do that? Like, how is it that I'm not paying any attention, but somehow like that, all that information, the cars, the signs, the advertising, the newspaper guy handing out the newspapers, all of that information was somehow hitting my eyeballs. I was ignoring it all, but then my brain goes, boom, I just found the needle in the haystack. There's the friend you haven't seen for 2 years, right? So I started pondering on this and just thinking that is just a totally insane thing that goes on. So the more I researched it, I discovered that the brain has this filtering mechanism, part of the limbic system, and it just basically filters everything out. And as a marketer, you have almost no hope of getting stuff through, right, into people's brain. And then I discovered some research from a guy called Professor Robin Dunbar, and he said that essentially we have these spheres of people who we know, like, and trust. There's our immediate family; they're the highest ranking in our brain. So if anything happens relating to those people, we're immediately on it. And then we've got our friendship circle of maybe 40, 50 people. And then we've got our extended friendship group of maybe 150. And then we've got our acquaintance network of 1,500 people. And then there's about 5,000 people you could recognize that that's someone you've seen before, a name and a face. Oh, yeah, it's an actor. I've seen them in a movie. Or, oh, yeah, I think I saw that person at a networking event last week, right? So that's in the big, broad 5,000. So basically in this research, he says, how do you get to be one of those high-ranking know, like, and trust people? And what he discovered is that it's mostly time, that we spend time with each other. If I spend 7 hours with you, you're going to elevate right through the ranks, and you're going to be in the top bracket. And then around, other than time, there's positive interactions. So if we have a lot of interactions, if we're emailing back and forwards, if we're texting, if we're on social media back and forwards, right? So we're elevating through the ranks there. And then there's locations. If I see you at one location at the office, another location we go bowling, another location we go for a walk in the park, another location we grab a coffee, those multiple locations, time, and touch points start to add up, and my brain puts you into the category. So if we've clocked up plenty of time, touch points, and locations, then I'm going to spot you from across the street. I'm going to go, oh, there's Terrence, right? My brain's tuned into you. So here's the conundrum for marketing. If you're just simply handing stuff out and no one knows who you are, the brain already has the hardware and the software to just filter that out, right? It's not even going to notice. It just boom, gone. So what we need to do is try and figure out how we can, in some marketers call this warm people up, and other marketers who have studied oversubscribed, they call it 7-11 foring, 7 hours, 11 interactions, 4 locations. And it's basically clocking up time and positive interactions with people on different platforms. So, for example, if we know someone is a prospect, we want to add them on social media. We might want to send them a podcast episode. We might want to send them some videos that we've created. Maybe we want to send them a PDF that's of great value and they can fill in some blanks. Maybe we want to send them a scorecard. Maybe we want to invite them along to an event that we're running. The more we can do what's called 7-11 foring, 7 hours, 11 interactions, 4 locations, then we actually break that filter. We get on the other side of the wall, and we're now talking to someone who's very receptive to us. So rather than just trying to sell, it's about warming people up to know who you are.
And I love the concept. Obviously, it works great for our business in terms of the longer sales cycle, relationship heavy. And again, I didn't want to mention the 7-11 4 because I didn't want you to think that I was trying to get to be a salesperson at Dent, because I do know it. But we preach it a lot, and again, it does work. It helps bridge that gap and build that trust.
We've all been through this. It's funny. Last time not long ago, I was looking at hiking boots, and I just went down the rabbit hole of hiking boots. And I'm watching videos about hiking boots, and I'm looking at the different brands, and I'm on the websites, and I'm joining the forums, and I'm and basically we 7-11 for ourselves, and then we buy the thing. So we've all done this.
Seems like we must be hardwired for it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I've enjoyed this so much. Let me ask you this. What do you enjoy most about what you do? Because obviously I've watched a number of you. I've been following you now for several months. I've consumed more than 7 hours of content. But I see it, and I want to know from your viewpoint, what is it that you enjoy the most about what you do?
There's some of it that's selfish, and there's some of it that's selfless. So I'll cover some of the selfish things that I love. I feel like we live in the most incredible time in history. I just feel like that it was just absolutely wild to be alive at this time. There's the technology, the state of the world, the fact that we can build relationships with people all over the world through social media. We can launch ideas and products. The way my brain is wired, I just want to be hands-on with all sorts of opportunities because I just love launching stuff. I love having an idea and seeing it come into the world. I really, really geek out on the concept that something was in my head and now it exists in the world as a product or a service or a movement or like a campaign. And just that whole process of bringing something out of my head and into the world is just it's an adrenaline rush for me. I really love it. And I love bringing teams together. Like there's something for me about the early stages of a team when it's less than 12 people and you're bringing together a new team who are going to work on bringing something out into the world, and it's going to be cool. So I love that early stages of business where you're launching something new, innovating, having late night discussions, not because you have to, but because you want to. I love that. Selflessly, for me, I really love seeing someone go from feeling frustrated and stuck with their marketing and their business and feeling like entrepreneurship is hell to learning a few ideas and concepts and going, actually, I've got a handle on this. I think I can do this. And there's nothing quite as satisfying as seeing that you've had an impact, that someone's life has improved. A big part about what we do is we develop entrepreneurs who make a dent in the universe. And we define that as using their business as a force for good. So they might do some charitable fundraising. They might work with their local church. They might work with homeless shelter. Maybe they've got an environmental cause that they're passionate about. We're pretty agnostic as to what they choose to do, but we really encourage businesses to find a way to use their business as a force for good. And to me, I really think that's a movement that I want to be part of. I want to see thousands of businesses that become successful, but also use their business as a way to positively impact their local community or the world.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I've been a marketing aficionado / geek for probably over 20 years. I've followed a lot of individuals, and you've made probably one of the largest impacts on how I approach marketing, and I've greatly appreciated. I'm going to be doing one of your accelerators this year.
Amazing.
To try and become a key person of influence. And as we wrap up here, I'd like to know where can people learn more about you on LinkedIn, Twitter? Where can they learn more about your accelerators and ScoreApp?
All of those social media platforms. So LinkedIn, I'm actually very active at the moment, and YouTube. There's some really good videos that we've been putting out lately. The team has put together. The accelerators, you can check out Dent Global, which is a good spot to kind of just have an overview. And ScoreApp, you can have a look at ScoreApp.com. And all of those have links to videos and webinars on demand, and you can kind of check all of that sort of stuff. And of course, if you like the books, they're all on Amazon.
Yeah. I would highly recommend. I keep them here on the corner of my desk, and I always show prospects and clients when I talk to them. So, Daniel, I greatly appreciate your time today. Like I said, I know that you're very busy, and I appreciate you sharing your time with a fellow entrepreneur and allowing me to get your message and my message out at the same time. But greatly appreciate the content that you put out there and how much you are willing to share of yourself with other entrepreneurs. And I'm just grateful that you came on the Grow IT podcast today.
Thank you very much for having me, Terrence. Cheers.
Anytime.